just an old-fashioned girl with an old-fashioned mind. Not sophisticated, I'm the sweet and simple kind.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. You might have to bear with me because I started looking at With Love Meghan without anything wrong with me, and I ended up with my immune system having been assaulted because I continued watching even when I was actually desperate to fall asleep on more than one occasion. And this incidentally was in the afternoon. And I have ended up with a streaming cold. Towards the end, I was sneezing. My immune system was rebelling against the assault. And of course, duty comes first, so I ignored it. Well, I'm paying the price now, but putting that aside, I have to tell you, I am going to ask Sean to post an invitation that I received for the latest Ballet Icons Gala, which is going to be held on Sunday evening at the Coliseum. It is one of the finest Ballet Icons galas in the world. They have stars from all over the world who come for it to participate. It is stunning dancing, fabulously produced, everything about it. It cannot be more highly recommended. And I just say that for what it's worth. And I'm also going to ask him to post it as well, I think, for Saturday. It's Sunday evening at the Coliseum. Without further ado, I am going to plunge in with Love Meghan. I'm going to read out one or two comments first, and then I am going to, so that you will see what people think, and then I am going to give my criticism of it. I looked at the whole thing, I made notes while looking at it, and I cannot tell you how much I would recommend avoiding it, save if you are a chronic insomniac. If you are a chronic insomniac, save yourself the doctor's bills, forget about the sleeping tablets. With Love Meghan will do it every time. It will induce the deepest possible sleep, if only because you are escaping from boredom of such magnitude that you couldn't make it up. Anyway, Lynn Williams says, "Morning, Lady C. I'm dying to get your take on the debacle with the Markle show. You're going to get it in a few minutes." Kathy Plunkett says, "The rainbow fruit platter is the same as on Pinterest, as is the ladybug. She must have spent 10 minutes researching ideas on Pinterest, but she hasn't elevated any of them. In fact, the cake with the whatever is the most basic you could get. My granddaughter would do more creative work than that. She and Netflix should be so embarrassed." Well, I understand that Netflix is pretty embarrassed in more ways than one, because the original people who entered into the contracts with Harry and Meghan now have egg all over their face. Corkyville Midwest says, love it. "Dear Lady C, since we still have a subscription to Netflix, I decided to try to get through a couple of Meghan's cooking show episodes. Only made it through one and part of the second before having to stop because I couldn't take it. My husband watched the first one with me and he said, sorry, sorry. Even I could do that, he said. The conversation was stilted, the recipes so basic when they existed as to be embarrassing, and her every conversation designed to clap back at every criticism ever levelled at her. Unbelievable in its basicness and so boring as to be unwatchable. That's why it's a great substitute for Nembutal. Just people telling her about her wonderful attempts at basic food prep, reminding one of how one might praise a small child for his attempts at a new skill. You've got it in one. The Meghans of this world are on some level small children who have never grown up, and they demand the recognition and praise of a toddler. It's a part of the narcissistic personality. Even her presentation was pathetic and amateurish, to put it mildly. Turned it off before all my kitchen skills were forgotten. Imagine needing praise for making a balloon arch while explaining where to place the balloons in the balloon tape guide. Really? May I make the point that balloon arches are so tacky? I mean, children's parties, fine, but balloon arches are cheapskate time. And I mean, I shouldn't really comment. I'll read my notes because I made my observations with my notes. Linda Finden says, arrogance personified. Markle's new TV program. Oh dear, it's egotistical bull. This rearranged with SH and then it ends in it. So it's egotistical bull on steroids. And by the way, I'd very happily say the word. It's just that it's YouTube. Lots of flattery that sounds over the top. Constant patting on back. Frankly, over bugger all. It's embarrassing to watch. It's almost satire, a send-up of real cookery programs as a joke. However, the money spent on this tax loss nonsense is hardly trivial, but the program is. And Janie Anderson, sorry. I'm suffering. I assaulted my body and it's rebelled. Janie Anderson said, she's only into beekeeping because Catherine was filmed as a beekeeper. Well spotted. And I am going to wrap this part of this presentation up with what Daniel Martin said at the end of his sojourn. I feel like this is all fake. Never were truer words said. Even though he was applying it to the scenery, it rarely applies to everything else. I mean, dire is the word. So now I will plunge in with my observations. At the very start of it, I quickly realized this was Much Ado About Nothing and stole Shakespeare's title. So, I noticed one or two themes because Meghan is still persisting in her lies, her flagrant lies, her false narrative that she was a product of a deprived childhood, that her family had no money whatsoever, and that she had to work for her privileges. None of that is true, I have to tell you. None of it. So, her first lie was, we haven't been to the bees for 2 months. This is at the very beginning. She starts out with a lie and she continues with a false narrative. We haven't been to the bees for 2 months. So contrived. I'm going to read my notes. She's so contrived. The beekeeper proves what's happening. Meghan needs explanations as to everything, including the life cycle of a bee. Now, if you're a beekeeper, you know about these things. I have a friend who used to keep bees in his Eccleston Square flat in the 1970s. And he knew all about bees even then. But Meghan, who is a beekeeper and knows so much that we haven't been to the bees for 2 months. Well, she might have walked past at some point, but it sounds as if she was never there before. Well, certainly not as a beekeeper. Then she gets into the whole business of being a hostess and makes it very apparent to me, who is a very experienced hostess, that she knows nothing about hosting a guest, a house guest, a dinner party, a lunch, nothing. She is so pedestrian, it is beyond belief. She makes a huge deal of prepping a guest room for Daniel Martin, who is her makeup artist. Now, I have to tell you, when a celebrity is doing a show and has to call in her makeup artist to be the first guest in that show, you know the show is going to be of no merit whatsoever. You don't have the hired help front of camera when they should be back of camera. You have the talent in the front of camera. This is not about snobbishness. This is about the fact that if you had interesting guests, you wouldn't have to be scraping the bottom of the barrel asking your employees to perform as if they were guests. But what came across to me was that she has so few house guests and so much time on her hands that she actually could waste her time doing rubbish. I mean, absolute palaver about nothing. Homemade bath salts. Well, it's good for people who have nothing better to do. But if it's someone else with something to do, they go to Penhaligons and get their bath salts or some such place. And Meghan seems to think that if she creates these phony, baloney, pretentious, piffling, artificial things, that she is somehow going to show everybody what a wonderful person she is, and everybody's going to appreciate it. No, Meghan, people are simply going to know that you have nothing better to do with your time, because if you did, you wouldn't be wasting it on trivia. She really, I said her, she has no clue about entertaining. I mean, can you imagine prepping snacks, truffle, popcorn? I ask you, what's that all about? Truffle, popcorn? I mean, whatever happened to Godiva chocolates? Or some such conventional thing that would show that she actually is a sophisticate instead of this pathetic non-entity posing as an entity. Well, she doesn't know the first rule of entertaining, I said, which is, first of all, it's the people you have that account and the mix of people you have. Then comes the food and drink. And a good hostess focuses on the more important, and usually what Meghan is making a big deal about is what the sous chef would do, or the staff would do, or the housekeeper would do, in terms of buying in basics. I say here she's trivial beyond belief. Her posture is that of a great, renowned, knowledgeable hostess. Then she deals with the trivialities of entertaining and totally doesn't even touch upon the important parts of entertaining. The whole thing is really about Meghan. Her posture is that of a great, renowned, knowledgeable hostess. Yet, the reality is, it's all about Meghan. She goes into nonsense about the TIG and her first encounters with Daniel Watson. So she's establishing a provenance, that she has a provenance, and that her right to be celebrated goes back to before she met Harry, which we all know is utter rubbish. And what you might not know, but I know as a fact, that the TIG was never the great outstanding success that she has made it out to be. She bought in the followers and supporters the way she's been doing with Instagram, but she is going to have grave difficulty doing it with Netflix. But I noticed that she hugged the beekeeper and he called her Meghan. And then she made a whole big deal about saving the wax from the bees to make beeswax candles. Well, that's all very good and well if you have the time. But if you are genuinely busy, you certainly don't have the time to be doing all of that. And how many people watching a TV show would really be interested in making beeswax candles? I ask that for what it's worth. So who is her audience? Because the Sussex squad, A, don't have the money, B, don't have the time, and C, well, maybe they do, maybe they're all not working, or maybe they're working for her. But I don't know who else would have the time. I mean, really, I said she creates chores for the idle. And she goes on and on about the whole business of making beeswax candles with scent, and you dropping a few drops of this, and then you go into the whole palaver of anchoring the wick, and as if it's of any consequence. I mean, talk about dull. So I have here, it's well made but boring. You'd have to like her to enjoy this show. You really would have to like her, and you'd have to like pretentiousness and being an absolute phony to like her. Then, of course, they mentioned her wedding cake with great affection and how wonderful it was, implying that the wedding itself was wonderful. Is that not the spectacle that the royal family forced her to endure because she was a proud, confident woman of colour and she was marrying into the royal family and she was gonna up their game by being the only proud, confident woman of colour in the royal family? Is that what that was all about? As for decorating the cake, you talk about a waste of time, because the cake wasn't even attractive or artistic. And also, I'll tell you, as an experienced hostess, everything Meghan does is regarded as tacky and très arriviste, and it's the sort of thing that no sophisticate would ever think of doing. Putting flowers in ice cubes is very cocked finger as I take tea time. One simply doesn't do it. One of the virtues of being truly discerning is an appreciation of plainness when plainness is desirable. So, having flowers in ice cubes and all of that pretentious piffle might work for the most unsophisticated people on earth who were going to think, well, where everybody's going to think we're elegant. No, they're not. They're going to think you are piss elegant, to use the expression that has always been used to describe vulgarians with pretensions who have absolutely no idea of how to conduct themselves. So, a lot of her presentation, though, I noticed, was very gay boy. I know this because my husband, who is gay, obviously, gay husband, is great at, but what Meghan takes forever to do and has made a TV show of, he will unleash himself on the state dining room table when it's laid for 24, and in 5 minutes he will have done some of the garnishing that I never bother to do. I couldn't care less, quite frankly. But he does it because it's a gay thing. And I'm very happy for him to do it because it makes the plate look a little bit nicer. But it's never over the top because that would be regarded as common, to use the word that Nicky Haslam perpetually uses. I think it's a very distasteful word by and large, but it certainly applies in this instance. And then, of course, they have to open up a bottle because Megsy Baby has the very skinny, dried up legs of a female alcoholic. Now, I'm not saying she's a female alcoholic, I'm simply saying she has the dried up legs of a female alcoholic. And she's on record as having stated how much she used to console herself with a bottle when she didn't get some this is all very tiresome, but I'll stop every 2 seconds otherwise, and I'm sure we don't want to ruin the flow. She ends practically every one of those episodes. And in fact, she doesn't end. She also, during it, they're all busy knocking back the booze. And she ends this first show with a study in vulgarity. They clink glasses and say chairs. Well, unless you are partly Finnish, as certain royal friends of mine are, again, it is very inelegant to either clink glasses or say chairs. I just say that for what it's worth. So, now that's being really snobbish, but I mean, my brother, I have to tell you, to give a joke at our expense, my brother would always, because he was very naughty, and he knew that you weren't supposed to clink glasses and say chairs, so he would rush up to me with a glass, clink it, as I tried to move my glass away, and he'd say chairs, and I'd say, and tables. So that's episode number 1. I'm going to try to step up on this and make it a bit quicker. Episode number 2 is with Mindy Kaling. And I mean, it's really sad that a British royal duchess can't scrape up even one A-lister. The biggest name she can scrape up is Mindy Kaling, who seems like a perfectly nice woman, by the way. And it became quickly apparent that Mindy Kaling is not a friend, that they'd only met once before, that they are what they called internet friends. I mean, in other words, not friends at all. And Mindy Kaling made the point that she's Indian, and how absolutely, basically privileged she was to receive the pot of jam, or as Meghan, because she's going to show us how knowledgeable she is, she doesn't call it jam, she calls it preserves, because jam is half sugar and half fruit, and anything else is preserves. Cock my finger as I take tea. She declares to Mindy Kaling, hostessing doesn't stop at one person. It is the spirit of it, whatever that means. I mean, if you're going to be a hostess giving tips on being a hostess, you could at least come out with something that actually makes sense. And then what does she do? Oh, I should actually say this episode started really rather beautifully, and it is beautifully produced and it's beautifully photographed. And it starts with Meghan picking blackberries. And we actually have blackberry bushes here. And she's busy picking blackberries and making it seem so romantic, because she makes preserves out of the fruit that she grows on her estate. Well, then I noticed her doing something that she should know better if she's supposedly a cook. She's frying a bacon. No, sweetie pie. You don't fry bacon. You bake bacon. It's quicker. It's healthier. I just say that for what it's worth. Well, Mindy Kaling went into a whole thing about having been given the jar of which was graded 1 to 50, and so that explained away the awkwardness, because it would have been awkward. And again, they're busy drinking alcohol early in the morning. That's not this. That's not this. This is not quite the same thing as what I just did. But Meghan likes a drink. Meghan loves being high. You only needed to see her to know that she loves being high. Then they go into the whole business of making a balloon arch. I mean, it really is scratch your bottom time, and how to scratch your bottom properly, especially when you're not sitting on it. I mean, you talk about stupidity. Everything in this show, I said, is for people who have a lot of time on their hands and nothing better to do than fill it with trivia. But then, did you see Meghan commit the great faux pas of an ill-bred person correcting Mindy Kaling's pronunciation of the word look and embarrassing her quite obviously and mocking her? I mean, is that the mark of a good hostess? I always thought, unless it was absolutely abominable, your guest was always in the right. I will remind her, if indeed she ever knew about it, of King George VI picking up his finger bowl and drinking from it after one of the more unsophisticated prime ministers did the same thing. Meghan, of course, would have been slapping his hand and saying, "Oh, no, that's not classy. That's not classy. That's a finger bowl." Then there's a whole big production of sandwiches for tea, and before Meghan lapses into the rubbish about being a latchkey kid. That's what she called herself, a latchkey kid. And she's now on and on about what a disadvantaged childhood she had. And she's playing for sympathy at the very moment that she's playing for admiration, which is something that all sociopaths and all narcissists do with tiresome regularity. And she goes on about how wonderful mom was, but not a word about her father, who by her own account is the one who was the sole parent for much of her childhood. Then, when Mindy Kaling says something about Meghan Markle, having already corrected her for not pronouncing the word look the way Meghan required that the word look be pronounced, she says something about Meghan Markle, and Meghan Markle is off 80 to the dozen about how she's not Meghan Markle, she's Meghan Sussex, and on and on and on and on and blah-de, 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 blah, about how it's so wonderful to have all of us in our family have the name Sussex, and Sussex is our surname. And this, of course, has created a conflagration on the internet, with people saying that Sussex is not Meghan's surname, nor is it the surname of her children. Well, in fact, I hate to disappoint you, But Meghan is right in that instance, because Harry is Prince Henry, surname Windsor, title Duke of Sussex. Meghan's surname is Duchess of Sussex, shortened to Sussex. And the children, although when they were born their surname was Mountbatten Windsor, which reflected their status as the grandchildren of the heir to the throne, as opposed to the children of the heir to the throne, because to be a great-grandchild of a reigning sovereign means that you are not a royal highness and you are actually no longer royal in status. And so the children were registered as Mountbatten Windsor. They are still Mountbatten Windsor, but for all social purposes, now that they call themselves, and they are called by their parents, and the palace has allowed them to be called Prince Archie of Sussex and Princess Lilibet of Sussex, Sussex actually becomes their surname. So there, at least, Meghan has some merit. But the piffle that she went on with, and I'm not going to go into the whole ins and outs of it, because the rules are quite clear as to who has what surname at what stage of their life, and as they move up and up the peerage, or indeed down it. I mean, she went on and on about such rubbish that I have made too many notes, because she's then making a fruit bowl, and at the same time that she's doing that, she's doing other stuff, and the timeline was all off, because the clothes kept on changing, and she kept on treating the show as if it were a fashion parade, but no continuity. So on a day that she's supposed to be making a fruit bowl, she's wearing something different from when she's actually with Mindy Kaling. Just bizarre. Then she's on and on about being a present parent, doing fruit bowls and doing whatever the thing with the vegetables, fresh vegetables, the crudité board is, and the charcuterie and blah, blah, blah. I mean, so Yawnsville, I can't tell you. And going on and on, making a point of being a present parent. I mean, I'd never heard that expression before, but I suppose with Meg's baby, anything is possible. And she then ends it with the whole business of, because they're preparing for a tea party, and she's making party favors for children with seeds and all sorts of other rubbish to show how emotionally unintelligent she is, that you don't get children to be excited about party favors by giving them lessons in ecology, planting seeds, and I mean, that's so pretentious. I mean, there's nothing about this woman that doesn't rub one up the wrong way. I mean, what about just giving children what they like? I mean, like candy that has reduced levels of glucose, I mean, but tastes good. What about giving them a toy that they would like instead of a pretentious little mini shovel? I mean, well, we all know Meghan's used to shoveling, but I mean, what she wants the children to shovel isn't the substance that she drops in the 16 bathrooms, all of which she needs. And then they end with supposedly making daisy chains. Making daisy chains. I mean, if my children, when they were young, or any of their friends, had ever gone to a party where people were making daisy chains, I mean, is Meghan trying to reintroduce child slavery? Because it seems to me that that's the direction she's heading in. So pretentious. No wonder Variety condemned the show as being what they said it was. So, I'm going to try to speed this up a bit. We get to episode number 3. This was the most interesting segment because in this one, Meghan has to defer to somebody of superior knowledge, namely the chef Roy Choi. Oh, I mean, they have the storyline that, you know, they're both Angelinos and Korean food and blah, 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 and all they have in common. But he basically takes over and he basically is telling her, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do. And so it became the most interesting. And she actually deferred to him, which to the extent that she's capable of deference. But she says things like she's cleaning. She says that she makes the point that she cleans up after herself, which I have to say I do as well. I know some cooks don't, but I always clean up after myself. She says something about when you grow home today. I don't actually. She said things that didn't quite make sense. And then he catches her out lying because Meghan can't help lying. And she can't help also when she makes a mistake, covering it up because she's never wrong. And there's an instance here where she's putting ginger in and she uses garlic instead of ginger. And he then says, no, put in the garlic. And she says, some more ginger. So she's putting ginger already and she's putting in some more ginger. Very subtle, but it was very symptomatic of her as a personality that even when it's a harmless error, because she confused the garlic with the ginger, but she knows everything and she's never wrong. She had to cover up for herself. And I just thought, you know, it was just pathetic, a pathetic performance. Then she does something that's really unhygienic. They're both tasting the food and they're using a teaspoon to taste it. And he tastes his and puts it down. She tastes hers and says, it's so good, or one of those mechanisms. And she says to the cameraman of Brooklyn to try some, hands it to him, and he tastes it from the same spoon, getting her mouth water. And he is gracious enough to do that. Well, I certainly wouldn't have, come on, Aurora, you're going to knock the table. You can't do that. Aurora was scratching herself and knocking the table. So I just thought, how unhygienic. I mean, and it was gracious of him to act as if it was perfectly normal, and maybe it is to him, but it certainly wouldn't have been to me. And I, at that moment, could well understand why Meghan took such exception to Catherine and the lip gloss, because Meghan doesn't seem to understand her mouth water is not the nectar of the goddess. It is saliva, and nobody wants it, really, except, well, Harry certainly used to. Whether he does or not is something else again. Then she goes on again, because she's subtly setting the stage again for the fact that her mom says about, my mom loves food stalls, and then she makes the point about that they had nothing but her mother was I think actually that wasn't at this point, I think that was later, that her mother was a travel agent, and so although they really had no money, they were able to travel. I think she makes that later, because I remember that, but the note doesn't say that here, so it must be later. And she also ignores her father throughout, notwithstanding the fact that prior to marrying Harry, she made the point repeatedly that her father was the main involvement in her life and the sole parent for many years. So, then I thought Roy Choi made a very interesting point that I picked up on. He made the point that MSG, monosodium glutamate, is like bouillon sauce, and that nobody thinks the bouillon sauce is actually racist. He's saying that MSG's unpopularity was on racial grounds, because it's basically the same thing as bouillon sauce, and nobody ever thought that bouillon sauce was going to be damaging your health, and he thought it was something racist, which was a very interesting point to make. And then, of course, they end with popping a bottle again, and this time the alcohol is being poured into water glasses, and it's supposed to be champagne. Well, I suppose you can guzzle more. I mean, Meghan has the legs of an alcoholic woman. So I leave it at that. Number 4 is the one with Delphi de Figueras. Now, Delphi de Figueras is Nacho Figueras' wife. She's actually from a good Argentinian family, and her father's a multimillionaire. But let's make no mistake about it. The Figuerases are not socially at the same level as any member of the British royal family, even a displaced and dispossessed one, such as Meghan via Harry. And of course, Nacho Figueras and Harry are professionally in bed together as polo players. And I think they do have a good friendship, but they also have a working relationship because both of them do polo together. And in fact, Nacho Figueras cannot survive really as a polo player without Harry's support. And Harry basically needs his support as well. So there's a strong, shall we say, opportunistic element to the relationship. But anyway, she's there and she's the guest. And again, so far, no A-listers, and there are never going to be any A-listers either. And there's all sorts of rubbish about them hiking together to establish what great close friends they are. And they're busy speaking Spanish so Meghan can show off that she speaks Spanish. And then they're on and on about, as they're making focaccia, that Meghan has an Argentinian accent. And Meghan says, when I lived in Argentina, she didn't live in Argentina. She spent 6 weeks as an intern in Argentina. She never lived in Argentina. Meghan never lived in Argentina. She was an intern in Argentina for 6 weeks. She never worked in Argentina at a proper job. She was an intern. She never lived in Argentina. It's all fantasy. And they go hiking. So this is really a lifestyle show about that people are supposed to think, oh, Meghan's truly wonderful. She's magical. She's marvelous. Everything that is ordinary that she does is extraordinary because she's doing it. It is, as Variety said, a massive ego trip. And then they're busy ending up with lavender bags, lavender treats. I mean, when people give me rubbish like that, and it very occasionally happens, if they're ordinary people, I think, oh, that's wonderful, and they care. But if it's somebody from my world that gives me something like that, I think, you pretentious piffler, what do you think you're doing? I mean, what planet are you on? Why would I or anybody else want that? Sorry, but that's the truth. Then, of course, they end up drinking from the same straw. Again, I think it's called mache or mahe or whatever it's called. Some drink. Mate. It's called mate. And again, she says, for the second time, when I lived in Argentina, you never lived in Argentina. And they're drinking mate. I've lived in places longer than she lived in Argentina, and I don't regard myself as having lived in them. I mean, what planet is this woman on? The fraud. Anyway, number 5 is the ladies' lunch. She starts out she's telling a story, and everything is about a story or a tale. And this is a dead giveaway as to Meghan Markle's true character, because she can't convey an incident. She can't actually just say it as it is. She can't recount something. She has to always be embroidering, telling a story, making up things as she goes along, bigging herself up. It's always a tale and a distortion of reality. And she doesn't realize that in the very act of saying and doing some of the things she says and some of the things that she does, that she actually gives the game away. And people may not consciously pick up on it, but on an atavistic level, they definitely pick up on it. And that's why they can't stand her. Then, of course, the dog Guy is being used left, right, and centre to establish how wonderful a dog lover Meghan is. But Guy is there as a prop. And this is deeply discomforting to anybody who is a dog lover, because narcissists and sociopaths use animals, more sociopaths than narcissists. Narcissists can be genuine dog lovers, but sociopaths never are. They always use pets as props. And I mean, there was no need for Guy to be there. Sociopaths use pets as really handbags and as accompaniments and as accoutrement and as, well, you got the point I'm trying to make. But Meghan then comes up with something else, which is really, to me, quite objectionable. Floral ice. I mean, oh, and also she's barefooted. She's pretty much throughout the series, she's barefooted. She's showing us how natural she is, but she's so unnatural. Anybody who's natural doesn't need to show you how natural they are. You'll figure it out for themselves. Sorry, you'll figure it out for yourself. Sorry, I'm tripping up over my words. But if you are, it's so easy to read. And so then she has floral ice. I mean, floral ice. It's the end in pretentiousness. I have never in my life been to anywhere that served ice cubes with flowers frozen within them. And if I had been somewhere, I would have been absolutely horrified, because it is the end in pretentiousness. And Meghan doesn't understand that plainness is often desirable. Yes, you need to know when to be plain and when to be fancy. She's got the measure and the mixture all wrong. Then there's more drinking of champagne and there's more clinking of glasses. Well, I mean, the woman is constantly drinking. And I know she likes a drink. She's admitted she likes a drink. And we can see that she likes a drink so much that the calves in her legs have frozen up. They have ceased to exist. They've been sucked out. Then she goes on, being the pretentious piffler and expert that she's without any expertise whatsoever, saying about that fish meat is a muscle, and if it has to be, if you cook it from this, it's going to because it's a muscle. Meghan, there's a difference between meat and muscle. Sorry. Didn't you know that, Meghan? There's a difference between meat and muscle. I just say that for what it's worth. Then she's busy creating crudities and I gather stealing Cory Vitiello's recipes. Well, he served a purpose, more than one purpose. Then she has her friends enthusing over, sorry, I should have said, we are now on number 5. We're off Delphi and we're now on number 5, which is the ladies' lunch. I'm sorry, I forgot to make that point, because the ladies who are lunching are her friend Abigail Spencer, who was on the show with her Suits, and they still talk and the others don't talk to her. And the other girl whose name I don't remember, whose son I think died rather tragically, which is terrible. But again, no A-listers, no B-listers, not even B-listers, D-listers pitching up. And she's talking about, as I said earlier, about the occasion of a ladies' lunch being a story, because everything has to be a story, everything has to be curated, and everything has to be a story, and everything has to be fabulous, and nothing can be simple, everything has to be elaborate, because the great Meghan has done it. And she has them enthusing over a floral arrangement that she has created. Meghan is one of the worst flower arrangers it's ever been my displeasure to run across. Whatever my mother's failings, she was an international judge of the Horticultural Society. She had a world-famous garden, and she certainly knew how to arrange flowers. And I'm here to tell you that Meghan not only doesn't know how to arrange flowers, she makes one of the biggest mistakes that anybody who is inexperienced in floral arrangements can make. She doesn't use Oasis. Everybody uses Oasis who knows anything about flowers. She's busy showing us how to create a mesh god in a bowl of flowers, and otherwise putting in one of those mesh bases. They don't work as well as Oasis. But of course, anybody would know that, but not Megsy Baby, because she's an expert on everything. Then she goes on again about and establishes again her poverty and deprivation when growing up. Because my first job, age 13, was at something like Humphrey Yogurt instead of Humphrey Bogart. Well, my understanding is that Meghan was spoiled rotten by her father. He was on $200,000 per annum minimum when she was born in 1981. And therefore, it's utter rubbish for her to be saying that she was ever deprived. She went to the best private schools, one of the most expensive universities, all paid for by her father, and trying to make out that A, her father didn't exist, and B, that her mother played a part she didn't play, and C, that she was somehow poverty-stricken and deprived, and she's this powerful, potent woman who's accomplished it all. Well, her lack of content and her lack of substance shows that she is actually really a totally empty vessel. Episode 6. She starts off making bacon and egg and avocado sandwiches. And again, she doesn't know that the quickest, easiest, cleanest, and most efficient way of doing bacon isn't to fry it. It's to put it in the oven and bake it. This time it's Mexican cuisine. And in the first few minutes, she has about 16 changes of costume. And her hairpiece is showing in this one. Have you ever noticed how big Meghan's head is? It's all of those Turkish virgins who have contributed to the size of it. So, Meghan is enthusing about the feeling of community and blah, blah, blah as they're shredding chicken. And she's the community with the staff, who, of course, she loves staff as long as they're going to tell her what she wants to hear. But then she says, I love feeding people. Maybe it's a mom thing. Then she teaches everybody how to dehydrate citrus. Citrus rings to dress up margaritas. I ask you, which human being on earth who didn't have an empty life and an empty head would be going along with all this rubbish? So now we come to episode 7, which is, she has a nice guest from Taiwan who is going to teach her how to make Chinese dumplings, which is like Chinese Christmas pudding, really, or turkeys at Thanksgiving. It's the Chinese equivalent. Then she mentions and promotes Archie's Chick Inn, which is where she gets the eggs from, their chicken coop. But it's all done Archie's Chick Inn. Has that been registered? Is that the only thing that she hasn't labelled and hasn't registered? Is this a precursor to merging Archie's name? Because that might actually force the king to do what Queen Margrethe of Denmark did with her grandsons. So let's see how that one pans out. But this time they're also making chili oil afterwards. And Meghan, the basics of it all, it's so basic, the whole thing. It's so tiresome. It's unbelievable. Then she says, again, and this I said earlier, but I have the quote here. We didn't have a lot, but my mom was a travel agent, and we travelled a lot. Ignoring her father's contribution, the fact that he literally bankrupted himself to not only put her through the best schools in California and one of the most expensive universities in the United States, but was supporting her even after she had left school, when she was bumming around and hustling those buns of hers to try to become the star that she never became. And she certainly isn't going to at the rate she's going. I just found it so offensive that she would be totally on about her mom and what a mom she is, but just ignoring her father. And then she more or less ends this episode with, and thank God we're coming to the end, if it's not in your best and highest good, let it go, she says. So she's now an expert on philosophy as well. And we have the evidence before our eyes to prove how successful she has been at living up to those philosophies, you know, that because she is full of platitudes, all of which are high sounding, but none of which are actually applied to her life. And so we end with episode 8, which is the brunch. And she has Alice Waters, who evidently is something eminent in the cooking lifestyle world. I've never looked at any of these programs, and I certainly don't intend to start now. Having been forced to look at this one, I'm sure the others might be more interesting, but thank you very much. I have better things to do with my time. But anyway, she actually, you could see she really respected and was actually somewhat in awe of Alice Waters, which was interesting to see, because what you were seeing was genuine admiration, the admiration, and you were actually getting an insight into true narcissism, because the trajectory of the narcissist is adoration, denigration, discard. The denigration might never come if you don't get to know them very well, because you being the person who, and them being the narcissist, because their inadequacies, which are what make them the narcissist, and their insecurities and their delusions of grandeur, don't get a chance to pollute the relationship and the relationship with you. So they will continue to admire you for a lifetime if their failings don't kick in to destroy the relationship. And she'd never, met Alice Waters before, fortunately, because to be involved with Meghan is to end up being ripped down by Meghan to her own mean level. And but she starts off by saying, "You know me, I have to give her a present," because Meghan's so generous, so thoughtful. So she does something and she wraps it and she makes sure that it's there for Alice Waters to receive as soon as she enters her house. So we're all going to know how wonderful, generous, wonderful person Meghan is. And she then again goes on about growing up. She had so much fast food, which when you're on a budget, she says, so in other words, she was one step away from total penury. And there she's again playing the pauper intentionally, the way she did in Fiji. So there is, as I said at the beginning of this, there is a theme, there's a narrative that is Meghan, the noble Boadicea who has conquered adversity and poverty and emerged as this beacon of light, who is going to show us how to do things that any 2-year-old can figure out for him or herself. But we, of course, as adults who are intelligent, can't. We need Meghan to show us the way. And again, Archie's chick-in features, leading me to wonder, is she going to be marching Archie? Are we going to be treated to Archie's chick-in? Is that going to be something that's going to be sold? Well, let's wait and see. Then she says, if your morning starts like this, you think about your day differently, because she's so natural. She starts the day with the chicken coops because she's such a chick. Yeah, we all know that, Meghan. yeah. Roasting chicken. Waffles. We all know about your talents. Then, of course, she makes the point that they have so many eggs that they have to share them with their friends. And I think she said they have something like 6 eggs a day. I mean, how does that stack up? I just make that point for what it's worth. I'm no mathematician, but I do know simple arithmetic. And if you're in a household of at least 4, 6 eggs a day, and you have eggs to share with your friends and give them away, somehow I'm beginning to smell another rat. And then out comes the booze again, and more clinking of glasses. So now we have Alice Waters disappear and the brunch starts. And Harry drifts in with one or two other of the flotsam and jetsam. And in comes Doria looking as if she's stoned. And this, of course, necessitates another series of costume changes because every 2 minutes there's a new costume change. And now she's cooking crepe. And I love my guests where not in pursuit of perfection, we're in the pursuit of joy, she says. Her theme is joy. She's forgotten that the last proud, confident woman of colour who used the theme of joy was Kamala Harris, and look where it got her. And the previous proud, confident white woman, which Meghan used to be, who used the theme of joy, was Hillary Clinton, and look where that got her. I just make those points for what they're worth. But she's evidently now belaboring the joy because she's going to teach everybody how to be joyous. Scratch your navel. When you get out of bed in the morning, you need to understand that what you've got to do is get out of bed, put your feet on the floor, open your eyes, and that's how you start your day. And I'm going to show you how to elevate your day. Once you get out of bed and you put your feet on the floor and you open up your eyes, well, would you like to come to one of my 16 lavatories and I'll show you what to do? She's so full of it, it's just beyond belief. Then she ends the show with thanking everybody thank you for loving me and helping me to celebrate. Because she, in her delusional way, was firmly convinced that everybody was going to be as fascinated by her as she is by herself. And it hasn't happened. The critics have been resoundingly, even the left-wing critics have been resoundingly condemnatory of the clap trap. So, then, of course, Harry does the minorest of features. And he says, he shares her to you. And she says, to love can't end on a better note than that. Meghan, I'm the person that your people tried to destroy the reputation of and accuse me of being a thief. Because I was decent enough to mark your father's 80th birthday party knowing he was over $40,000 in debt as a result of medical procedures that he couldn't pay off and you have not helped him with. And you are daring to say you're going to end to love because can't end on a better note than that? Love. You are a poisonous, nasty bitch is what you are. And if you think I am being unfair, sue me, because I'm getting ready to nail your cohorts for the lies that they have told about me that you orchestrated trying to destroy my reputation, because I was decent enough to try to do something for your father, which you couldn't be bothered to do because you have no further use for him. You are absolutely no good, and most decent people understand it, and they see it, they know it, and that's why your With Love, Meghan is not only a farce, it is an acknowledged farce and a bore. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Okay, thank you so much. Take good care and goodbye. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and Godspeed. Bye-bye.